Okay, we're going to make lower resolution videos so we have more room. So the next question that our dear friend Reb David Barnes asked about Zionism, I think is probably the most important of these three questions because it's the most halachic of the three. The others, you could argue, these are issues of Agadah, and this is actually an issue of Halachah. The question is, with the return to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, shouldn't we be obligated halachically to give thanks and to say Hallel, to recite the liturgical psalms of Hallel? And I'll be honest with you, for a long time, I always said like this, I didn't understand the celebration of what they call Yom Ha'atzmaut, which historically was the 5th of Iyar, and yet today it's not generally observed on the 5th of Iyar. Depends on when does it fall during the week. This year it was observed on the 4th of Iyar. Anyway, but the 28th of Iyar, what they call Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, or Jerusalem Reunification Day, I'll be honest, it made a certain amount of sense, because the difference between the two was that the Independence Day was when the war began in Israel, a war that killed 1% of the Jews living in the Holy Land. That's a horrible, horrible thing. And it's not when the war ended, it's when the war began. We don't celebrate when wars begin, we celebrate when wars end. And whereas it would seem in a simple way that the 6-Day War, that's an incredible thing. And although in the end we find historically it was totally expected. It's not a surprise to anybody. The Pentagon was predicting that such a war would take place and would last, under a week. So it's not as surprising as we thought it would. But we're ignoring a bigger question here and a bigger issue here. Is the halachic ramifications of this. And so anyway, but in the end, I could understand why someone would feel a war was won in 6 days and Jerusalem was gotten back. Even though, why did they lose Jerusalem? It was because of Hayar. Jews lost access to the old city of Yerushalayim because of the events of what they call Yom Ha'atzmaut. So, anyway, but let's put all this aside. Where does a halachic, because this is a bigger issue altogether, forget about Zionism, where does a halachic requirement to say Hallel come from? Where does a halachic requirement to do anything come from? That's binding on the whole Klal Yisrael, that's binding on every Jew. And it's quite simple. There was a Sanhedrin. There was a high court in Jerusalem, and later it moved to different places. Wound up in Yavne. They call it, I don't know if it's Greek or something, Jamiza. They call it the Council of Jamiza. I hadn't heard about, or Jamia. I think it's Jamia. And that's what they call Yavne. I never heard of that until I started working at my current job. And the Galach told me about the Council of Jamia. And so anyway, and other places where we had the Sanhedrin, and that's where the Jewish people as a whole, whatever the high court is, that's giving teachings for the whole Klal Yisrael, that's where binding halachic resolutions can be made. And so that's why we have a Chanukah, that's why we have a Purim, because these days were enacted by a duly appointed and recognized Sanhedrin that had the authority to do such things. And no such body exists today, including, or I would say excluding, this nascent Sanhedrin, they have no halachic power. And so to do such a thing, to recite Hallel, especially with the bracha, it's a big question. Can you recite Hallel with a bracha on Rosh Chodesh? Because it's just a minhag. And generally the Sephardim don't, the Ashkenazim do. But my holy Zayda, the Chavas Yoyer, says that even if you make a minyan in a shul, that's not the regular minyan. And certainly if you make a minyan somewhere else, and certainly if you're davening by yourself, even though it's not my minhag like this, it makes sense. Maybe I should make it my minhag. That in Rosh Chodesh, even Ashkenazim should not be making a bracha on Hallel. So it's but even to say Hallel without a bracha, Gemara in Pesachim says that that someone who says Hallel every day for just any reason is a heretic. And Rav Soloveitchik, who was the leader of the religious Zionists in America, he said he applied that Gemara to the recitation of Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and I assume on Yom Yerushalayim as well. So to just make up, I'm going to say Hallel, especially with the bracha, we don't have the halachic authority to decide, certainly not for the whole Klal Yisrael. You want to say perhaps a local Rav has, that the mitzvah of lo sasur could apply to a local Rav in a local issue. And so if you're in a community, maybe the Rav paskins like that, maybe you have what to stand on. And I would tell you, wherever you live, whatever shul you attend, don't make waves. There's no reason to make waves. But you gotta be realistic. But you also have to know, what are we talking about? What is the what is this whole story? Where are we coming from? What is Judaism? What is Halachah? You can't just make up something and just decide that it's binding on the whole Klal Yisrael. The Rabbanut in Israel, they don't have that authority to decide something like that. They are not a Sanhedrin. They are not, and so you want to add something liturgically that's not binding, to say extra slichas or something. That's a different story. But things they're binding on the whole Klal Yisrael, there's no justification for that. That's not how these things work. To say that something's binding on every Jew just because we say so. Now there was such a thing as a local Purim, and to have a day, to have a Sudas Haidod, that is halachic. And so if you really believe this is an issue, that you want to make a Sudas Haidor, I can hear that. But there's a difference between a Sudas Haidor and a Sudas Mitzvah, between a Thanksgiving celebration and an obligatory celebration. You want to make it a Sudas Mitzvah, you want to make a Siyam. Siyam, it's a Sudas Mitzvah in a certain sense. I'm late for work. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. The best answer I have, though, is follow your own local Orthodox rabbi. I can't force on you my standards. All right, thank you.